Will, thanks for coming on the podcast. Do you want to start off with a quick introduction of yourself and your business, and then we'll take it from there?
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm Will Cookson. I'm the co-founder of Pangolin PR. So we are a consumer PR agency based in London, who've been going about 10 years, and we represent a range of consumer brands, helping them essentially earn attention and cut through the noise for their brands and really build a bit of brand fame. So we talk about ourselves helping brands really cut through the noise through creative simplicity.
Very good. We'll come to like what the business does in more detail a little bit later, but it's always good to get a bit of background in terms of your career before starting the business, and then maybe take us through like how that came about. And I mean, you got a co-founder as well, so it'd be good to hear the sort of the story behind you two meeting as well.
Yeah, no worries. So I went to university and I studied business at uni. So did that classic thing of a really broad university degree where I didn't really have any idea what I wanted to do apart from I wanted to work in business. So left that pretty broad. And then I was about to do a placement year in a year in industry, trying to find out relevant jobs, and nothing really took my attention. And then I was about to go back because I hadn't found that sort of year in industry or sandwich year. And then randomly got talking to someone. I was actually on a summer school down in Cornwall teaching wakeboarding and water skiing down in Cornwall, and long story short, got teaching to a family for about 3 or 4 weeks who were down there on a long family holiday. And turns out one of the family members ran a really successful PR agency called Freud's, who's like top 3 or 4 PR agency in the UK. Got chatting to them, realized actually I got on really well with people and had a good rapport, and really in terms of communication, loved communication, hearing people's problems and understanding that. They said, oh, well, maybe you should try PR. So why don't go back to uni, come and do a year in industry with us. So I went to work for Freud. So I went and worked with them on a number of different teams, but mainly I was on the international team doing all their international strategy and planning, which sounds very high level for a grad. So I was more of a junior at that level. And was there for a year and loved it. Just thought it was amazing. I was working on all sorts of wicked stuff, from big international projects, but also working on red carpets at BAFTA film festivals and stuff, which was, a really amazing eye-opening moment for me in terms of what PR was as an industry. And then went back after uni, so they hired me as their first ever grad. And I was there 6 years and worked my way up, as everyone does in the agency model, working your way through the sort of rungs and the ladder, and got to myself at a stage where after 6 years or so, I'd really enjoyed it. Amazing business, not a bad word to say about them, but I just always had the itch to do something myself. I'd grown up in a family where my mum and dad had run their own businesses. We always talked shop round the dinner table, even as like 13, 14-year-olds all heard mum and dad, they run the company together. So always had that in me and that fire in my belly to try and do it on my own, and realized, no, I don't know the ins and outs of running a P&L of an agency, but I feel like I could learn that on the go. And I managed to find a couple of lads in the business as well, and we shared a number of beers and decided to take the plunge and did it ourselves. So left with absolutely no idea how to run an agency. We knew how to run projects successfully and win clients and do the fundamentals of the job client side, but obviously running an agency is a very different beast. So no real understanding of profitability ratios and staff turnover ratios, etc. So been a learning curve, and that was 10 years ago. So I left with another co-founder called David, who I'm still with, both 50-50 partners.
Very good. It might be good to go into that, like, so maybe first 12 months then of coming out of a job and starting a business and getting that off the ground, and maybe take us through what that looked like and how you got new business in, and some of the lessons learned in like finding out what it's like to run an agency.
Yeah, no worries. So first year, Dave and I sort of reflected, I remember at the end of the first year, and we're like, look, where have we come? What have we learned? And I think at that point we'd had 22 clients in our first year, which in an agency model where we're, working on them, for example, it might be a new product that's launched in the UK or a new restaurant that was opening or whatever it could have been. Anything that's consumer brand was our world. And 22 was a lot. And the reason why we had a lot of clients is we were starting small, right? We had no real creds. We were 29 at the time. So we needed to build a bit of creds of our own and actually build up some case studies to prove that we could do it. So we work with a lot of smaller startup brands, which were brilliant, right? Because it essentially gives you the freedom and flexibility to do stuff. There's not a lot of process in those smaller businesses. They trust you. They know that you've done it before at a bigger agency, which was great. The problem that came with that after a year of working, the first craziness where you're just all in on everything. It was myself, David, and actually another co-founder left Freud's with us, and who actually left after a couple of years, which I'm sure we can get onto. But so it was just us three, the chaos of just in the weeds. We didn't really hire anyone properly until I don't think the end of that first year. But the nature of startups is their P&Ls fluctuate, right? The longevity of how long their businesses are going to go for chops and changes. So I think we got to the end of that year with 22 clients, worked ridiculous hours, obviously, making sure everything was a success, as we've continued to do, just with more people. But we also realized some of those were just not going to continue, right? They're not going to be long-term relationships because the numbers aren't going to work. Those businesses are going to go bust, or they might change, or they fall out of love with their own company. So the big learning in the first year was just like, actually, let's think more strategically about the businesses that we can that might be a bit more established, that openly have a little bit more budget to throw against marketing, which again, for smaller businesses, investing in marketing can feel like a really, really big investment for them, understandably, right? Based on turnover or where the company's at. For the bigger brands, it feels less of a big investment, and proportionately they might be doing paid advertising, which again is a huge chunk of money. So PR is often a slightly a smaller pot of cash. So we just realized, I think, at the end of that year, let's start to focus a bit more and try and get back in with the bigger brands that we'd been working with at other agencies, which was a slight sort of shift for us. So that was sort of one learning. And the other learning really on that was also we got a couple of opportunities where we were asked to be brought in as sort of a white labeled PR service through other agencies. So the collaboration of working with other agencies and then bringing you onto projects early doors is like one of the most valuable things. So we quickly realized, don't have an ego about being white labeled as an agency and the client initially not knowing you, because actually that was our foot in the door with Pernod Ricard, who's one of the world's biggest booze brands, who own everything from Absolute Vodka, Malibu, Chivas, Ballantine's Whiskey, huge big brands. We were brought in on a Beefeater project, Beefeater Gin, to launch their distillery in Kennington in London. We were initially like, oh, should we do this? Should we not? We left to have our own brand and IP. Turns out we were like, why would we ever turn this down? Did the project, and that's turned into a 10-year relationship with Pernod Ricard. So big learning again, as new businesses coming through, drop the ego. Ultimately, there's any opportunity, you don't know where the biggest opportunities are going to come from in those first couple of years. So as long as it makes some form of strategic sense and you can see there's a foot in the door somewhere, just run at it, do a great job, and you never know what's going to come.
Something that you just touched on there, so like the transition of focusing on or going from, bigger thinking really, and in terms of going after the bigger companies. I imagine it's an industry that's quite, we're going to say cliquey, but relationship-wise, and relationships are big. So the big agencies usually get the big clients. So
yeah,
how did you go about being on the smaller agency? Just started. Is it about 12 months that you made this decision to go for the bigger fish? How do you navigate getting into those companies and then ultimately winning that business?
So I think what's been really fascinating for us is we work with some brilliant brands. If you look at our website and stuff, we've got really big household brand names on there. We work with Pepsi, and we were their global agency for a number of years, about 8-9 years. 7-Up, as I mentioned, those drinks brands before. The reason really that we managed to get in there and stay was a couple of things. One was, once you had your foot in the door with someone like Pernod, and proving that actually, yes, you're an agency of 3 or 4 people at the time, but you can dedicate a huge amount of time to that specific client. It's irrelevant whether you're 100 people, right? You're only ever going to have 3 or 4 people working on your project probably anyway. So we just made sure, one, delivering exceptional quality work, and made sure they knew exactly who we were investing a lot of time going to see the clients personally, which lots of bigger agencies just didn't do, right? They'd go and sit in their offices and it wasn't really that. We were fully invested in the team. We were baked into their physical buildings a lot of the time. We would go over and work from their offices, which we were prepared to do. It didn't make any difference for us. So one was that, and just getting your foot in the door and showing that you actually are an invaluable member of their team that really is invested in their business was one, and hence that turned into, off the back of Beefeater, we got work with Chivas Regal, which is, the second or third biggest blended whiskey in the world. So we got on with those guys, and off the back of that, over these last 10 years, we've ended up in the Absolute, Malibus, Ballantines, all of those other brands have unlocked because we've consistently dedicated time and focused on the growth within those. We haven't looked left and right and gone, great, that's in the door, let's go out and smash new business and try and find stuff from another area. Now we focused on look after the people that are already in your house and in your home. So that was one important thing we did. And then the other piece, bluntly, was exactly the point you said, which was relationships. So after 2 years or so, we were in with Pernod and growing really well within them. We did have a really speculative concept. We were like, we're going to go out to New York. Our old PepsiCo clients are out there. We're going to go meet them. We had a couple of other speculative meetings, which I think both of them fell through. So we ended up essentially just flying to New York for a nice lunch, where we met my old clients, and I hadn't seen them for a number of years, and just had a good catch up with them and talked about the agency and where we were at. And off the back of that, they knew us. They knew that I could run the business in terms of a small project at a time. And by the time we landed on the flight back from New York to London, we had a couple of briefs in our inbox, which again just shows that what that was about a relationship that I'd already had a number of years ago. But the first piece there was about, if it's a new relationship, invest in the new relationship. There is no better cost-effective way to grow your business than internal referral growth.
Very good. The next question onto that is, you've got managing a lot of these clients. I guess you have to bring team members in to take the work as well. How do you ensure that quality of relationship and quality of work as well is carried on into team members? I'm sure everybody has probably made mistakes when hiring, so there's probably a few of them in there. But
Yeah.
I think you mentioned before that that's something that you've really cracked down on, and
Yeah.
like who you hire is really important now. What's
Yeah.
some of maybe the learnings then over that period of keeping the relationships high and also the quality of work high, but at the same time bringing in people to take that off you?
Yeah. So I think we learn early the benefit of having a small agency is that your team learn directly from you. Dave and I are very visible in the business. We're still sat in the office with the team whenever they're in the office anyway. So in the early days, and even up to recently, right, we're an agency of 25 people now. We're not a huge, massive agency. So one, they get loads of visibility with us. So they get to see and hear and have a lot of live iterative feedback on what we, David and myself, think is good and who that is then passed down to. So I think it's important they see us and see what we think is good as agency founders. Two then is just understanding process and best practice. I think as we've continued to grow and as we want to continue to grow to get to an agency of 30, 40 people size, it's a really interesting tipping point where, yes, Dave and I might not be in the weeds as much now as we probably were 3 or 4 years ago. But what's really important there is, does everyone in the business understand what good or great looks like? So what we've started to do now over the last year or so is really bed in processes so that everybody at every level at all types of different projects, so whether that's a press office function and doing a launch for a client, whether that's it literally down to how you run a meeting with a client, what do we see as best practice? This is how we, as from 1 or 2 years into the business, this is how we ran it. This is what we all expect as a great level of service, and this is why someone would continue to work with us as a small business. Set those benchmarks, set the process, and then make sure it's refreshed and people are aware of it. So on an annual basis now, we're bedding in a sort of a process system that everyone is refreshed of that every 6 months or so, because that's really important. I think we have come unstuck sometimes as founders where we might pull people up or say that isn't up to scratch, and openly they're like, well, bluntly, no one's told me or where the level of expectation is.
Yep.
And you just have a level of an assumption. Oh, of course, they've come from a different agency. That's just, they must know how that's done. So I think as founders, you can easily forget that. So yeah, bedding in that best practice, seeing it from the founders is still really important, right? And hearing it fresh from them. And then it's also about catching stuff early. So again, making sure that you all have a grown up enough relationship where This isn't about critique, it's about consistent growth for everyone. And that's including Dave and I. Dave and I are both pretty non-ego founders. We're pretty open for feedback. And again, we have that policy with our team of associates and everyone to say, if Dave and I aren't doing stuff right, you let us know. So it's about iterative process and learning from that, if that answers the question.
Yep. Yeah, it does. We're going to move to maybe some like in more industry-wide topics, and for somebody that's not involved in the PR world, maybe it could look like what PR is you get somebody an article in a magazine and that's job done, which might have been the case, I think, maybe 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Do you want to take us through what typical engagement looks like today, and maybe how that compares to when we first started 10 years ago?
Yeah, for sure. It's a really interesting one. We at Pangolin talk about, of course, we've got an acronym that's all about P's. So we've got a model now, which is all about the 4 P's. So looking at a modern conversation ecosystem, and I'll take you through those 4 P's. But I think looking back, right, PR was traditionally seen as whether you're doing an event and getting certain people down to events and journalists to come and trial products or whatever that might be, the big holy grail were you trying to get coverage, whether it was dependent on the brand or whoever, trying to get on TV or in the newspaper, and opening it up at the weekend and seeing if you got a double page spread on one of your clients, all that sort of stuff, which fundamentally hasn't changed. That is still massively important, and still for a number of our brands, actually getting brilliant traditional earned PR coverage is the holy grail. That's what they love, right? All the way up to the C-suite in any business. It's always nice to throw a newspaper down or send them a clip from TV and be like, look, people are talking about your brand organically. Yep. That we're getting coverage and we're driving conversation. So that still is really important. What's interesting now for agencies in the world of PR is that how that conversation comes about is completely changed. So we talk about one of the P's being publications, which is fine, but we also have platforms, we have people of influence, and we have peers. Peers being the real holy grail, right, which is openly your consumers talking to each other, sharing news stories, mainly through WhatsApp channels or, direct messages with each other. That's the modern word of mouth that is, the golden ticket for any brand. If you can create ideas and stories that ultimately people are sharing organically for you directly with their mates and saying, have you checked this out? This is brilliant. Phenomenal. So the peer piece is still really important, and we need to think, how are we going to get into group chats as a brand now? How are we going to create stuff that people genuinely on group chats want to talk about? So that's the peers piece. The people of influence is it's an obvious one, right? Like a brilliant PR campaign now can actually just be a person of influence, whether that's a traditional influencer, TikTok or whatever it might be, doing something for your brand in some shape or form. And that can actually, in its own right, one piece of content from the right person of influence can turn into traditional earned media coverage, can turn into stories on the news, can also end up in group chat. So it's just understanding that people of influence now and influencers are all part of this modern ecosystem. They can't sit in silo. You can't have a social team working over here on a social campaign and a traditional earned PR agency over here. We have to smash the two together because it's all part of the ecosystem. And then the final piece is just publishers, right? So really powerful publishers. You look at in the UK specifically, we're a global agency, so there's lots of others, but look at the traditional Lad Bibles, Puberty, those accounts which really, again, one piece of content or a piece of film that you're watching through that can end up in group chats, can end up on the TV. They have the power of those digital social publishers now is vast, and there's a number of them bubbling up all the time. So again, what we're now looking at is when we're working with brands is going, one, what's the conversation we want to create, and then where do we start the conversation? So really thinking about what's the right route to market, what's going to feel really organic, what's going to be the best way to go about that.
Is there any parts in particular that are like seen as at risk for like agencies in terms of the AI stuff?
Yeah. The $1 million question at the moment is AI. I think I'm doing a lot of, and as is my co-founder and many people in the team are looking at that. So we've got 2 consultants at the moment that are working with us on AI and how that's going to be embedded into agency models. I have a strong point of view, which is, and there's lots of different people I speak to in creative industries that are saying, yeah, like AI is just going to be a phenomenal tool that will bolt on and help support everything that we do. And if anything, it'll just make us more efficient, etc. Totally buy all that. But I also don't think we should have our head in the sand to think that what we're doing can't at some point be automated in some shape or form. So, and the other thing with this isn't the growth of the internet where dial-up is quite slow in terms of adoption. It's, expensive to get into this. There are chat GPT models, there's Gemini, there's a million tools now out there which people are already using. So the speed of this adoption is also just bonkers, and their speed of growth, right, of the actual AI tools, and the speed that these tools are learning themselves. So I also think we need to be aware of how fast this is going to quickly disrupt and adopt everything we're doing. So in my mind, there's a few parts how that's going to impact us. One is the best ideas and the best creative work comes out from insight, right? So it's a genuine problem that we're solving. It's a consumer issue that we're addressing. So when we do PR, we don't think about just a specific brand story out that traditional advertising might do. We come consumer first. So what's the problem that they're facing and how can the brand get involved with that? So research, data, consumer insight, that piece, which normally go to research agencies or focus groups, all that sort of stuff, that is going to be so much faster, more efficient, and a way easier way to get that insight for us. Of course, you need to make sure it's from credible sources, etc. But the insight, data, research piece to get to the root of good ideas or insight or strategy is going to completely be revolutionized, right? And I think there's research agencies out there that used to traditionally do research with surveys going out to 5,000 people, and it'd be quite a manual. That's completely going to turn on its head. So that's a really important part up front. We've then got like the creative. So once you've done that, like how we generate in creative thought, and this is the massive one. Everyone is saying at the moment that no machine is going to be able to really put two things together that feel random, and some of those ideas that are just human genius that no one can put together. Like why for a price comparison site would you ever come up with compare the meerkat? A machine would never have come up with that because it's so off the wall. And I'm like, well, that's just down to the data and the type of information you chuck into a chatbot, right? It's like, I want to come up with disruptive, off the wall, random ideas that have some random link with it, churns out a ream of them in 55 seconds. So I do get it to a certain extent, but I also think we need to be really realistic about the power that we have as agencies, is we can still come up with phenomenal ideas where we're going to add value. And for me, it's all about value. Is we're going to add the value to the client to say what sentiment, what feels right for the brand, what tonally feels right for them. Then how is that actually going to be implemented and activated in the right way to market? That sort of stuff AI at the moment is still miles from. But some of the initial idea generation, we are already looking and using some of those learning tools to see what ideas it's throwing out and then seeing where that leads us. So I just think we should be realistic. In 2-3 years, the creative idea piece, I still want that to be overseen and led and sense checked by a human, but let's not pretend that when there's some brilliant marketing ideas that aren't going to have come from an AI learning machine. There will have been. And then finally is then just implementation, right? So how do we actually get that out to market? The traditional drafting press releases, writing key messages, getting all of the journalist contact and databases, which at the moment are IP. So the kind of IP, you have to have logins to get journalist contact details, etc. Fine. And that will probably remain the same. But all of the manual copywriting, right? A huge amount of comms is copywriting. That is, again, going to be turned on its head. That's going to be sped up, automated, sense checked by human, refined by human. But a lot of that initial stuff, of course, that's going to be taken over. That is just the reality. The same as if you're in data businesses now are just going to pump it all through AI with human sense checking that the data makes sense. So because it can work faster, it can crunch better. You could have 5 iterations of a press release within 5 seconds, which a human can then go, I love this. This is how it all needs to change. So again, it's going to turn on its head completely, but in a really interesting way. The creative piece is still what we pride ourselves on, and still really understanding brilliant ideas and how they're activated and executed and what's the right creative for the right brand. That's still going to be around for a long time. But I do think we need to have fully eyes open and being seen. How can we be quick and agile and move with it? Because it's not slowing down.
How do you think that the industry as a whole, for other agencies and in-house teams, sort of embrace the AI? The PR, again, from the outside looking in, seems like a older school business type methodology, if you like. Do you think, as a whole, people will embrace it, or they'll think, "No, we've always done it like this, so we'll always keep on carrying on doing it like this"?
I think it's a really interesting topic, because when David and I first set up our PR agency, which was 11 years ago, a couple of our friends who were in the marketing world said, "Oh my God, really? Like, everything's going to influencer. Is it the right time to be investing in a PR agency? Is that a practice or service that's still going to be used?" And actually what we've seen is the complete opposite of that over the last 10 years. Actually, the biggest impact that we've seen is advertising's been really hit, in the sense of people are now mostly online on the whole. We've created a button which is a skip button, so we can actually click past your advert if we want to. And actually the effectiveness for brands to really disrupt and get people's attention is even harder. So people are, slightly switching off advertising traditionally. So what the role of PR has become even more important, to be a really cost-effective way to get brand messages across and really disrupt and drive earned conversation. And that actually hasn't gone away. If anything, it's just been turbocharged. So look at big ad agencies now, some of the best campaigns and the best work that comes out actually feels more like a traditional PR idea, which has then been brought to life in a beautiful film in some shape or form, but actually they're earned ideas. So, which is brilliant, right? Because it puts us in a really brilliant position as an agency. Yep. Also, as everyone knows, the grey area with PR and comms is, where does influencer sit? Is it social? But we do influencer piece. So all the agencies are slightly fighting in the influencer world. Where does that mean for us as a principle? I still think genuinely the actual pure art form of understanding what is an idea that is going to drive organic conversation. What's the thing that you, Tom, are going to chat to your mate in the pub about, is still the most powerful thing. How would you ever sit in the pub and talk to your mate about a brand? Well, that's what we know how to do. You're not going to sit there and talk about an advert unless it's Tiger Woods doing something insane that you've never seen before on a golf course, or whatever shape or form it might be. They're the rare few. What we can do is still really understand and have a brilliant skill set of going, how can we create stories that people want to talk about? And that's still gold dust for a lot of brands. And when it's done right, and we've had a number of those with our agency that have been smash hit campaigns, it's phenomenal, way more effective than a lot of other traditional advertising. So I don't think we're going anywhere. It's just the route to market might be a little bit different.
Yeah, very good. I want to touch on briefly on obviously the business development side of things is something that I'm interested in, and you mentioned that, and I know PR is a lot about relationships. How are you, and maybe looking into the future a little bit actually, on how are you opening new doors now for, I know, case studies and work that you've done with current clients that then leads to like a bit of word of mouth? Do you have like the business development strategy in place as well, and what's the plan to grow?
Yeah, so we've bedded in a few things from biz dev. I mean, obviously every agency that's been going 10 years has tried many different new business tools. It's the thing that if you can crack, my God, you'd be a multimillionaire, wouldn't you? Every single agency would use you under the sun. So I don't think there's one silver bullet, but we've done a few things. So one, we have a thing called like network growth tracker. So we have not just left it to Dave and myself to be empowered to drive new business and lead gen. So every week we have every single person in the business look at their network, looking who they've got relationships with. And this isn't old clients that they're going to try and bring from other agencies. This can be anyone from another agency they've got relationships with, a mate of theirs that's gone to work for a brand. Essentially just looking at your network. And LinkedIn, let's be honest, LinkedIn is the perfect tool to do that. Rip off your contact list. It sounds very basic, but we've bedded that in with the whole agency, all the way from our associates directly down to some of the more junior brand new members of the team, who again, who cares if they're 21 years old, if their mate works at Tinder? Well, Tinder would be a great client. So we've bedded that in, and we have a weekly process where we just have a very targeted list with each of us, 5, 6 contacts that we're just trying to build a relationship with, which is one, and we're bedding that system in. And that's a long tail approach, right? Nothing's going to happen overnight, but thinking commercially at every person's level has been brilliant. And it's really nice to see the people that sort of step up and get really energized by that. So that's also great, and finding, good talent in your business who love new business. So that's great. Sort of the other piece of the pie for us is at a senior level, seeing where clients are moving to is a really important one that I think so many agencies forget about, right? Which is all of the clients that you've ever worked with, just track them and see where they've gone and where they've headed to. And actually a few WhatsApps here and there, you suddenly realize, oh, well, we'll reconnect. And it's all about being front of mind. So a couple of those over the last 2 years, quick check-ins or a coffee with someone has resulted very quickly in, oh, actually, yeah, there is a brief coming up. Maybe we should put you on the roster. We go into the process. They already know us. They trust us. And amazingly, the work comes through. So we've seen some really good wins off the back of that piece there. And I suppose the final thing, which again is a hard thing to measure and track, but that is around, we've really doubled down on awards. So really, if I was a client, I often put myself in the client's shoes, and when I speak to clients, ultimately you want to be working with agencies that are going to be doing some of the best work in the industry. And however much people love or hate awards, it is a simple benchmark for people to see where the great work's coming from. So, and there's 2 things we're doing in that is, one, existing clients and showing off the work that we're doing with that, and, getting shortlisted or winning awards for the work, the standout work we've done. And, you only need a handful of the ones that you really feel proud about. And that's not to say the other ones you don't. It's just some have more natural success than others. So shouting about those and being really proud about those and getting into awards, and then, making all the clients aware and marketing that to the best ability is a big thing that we're pushing down on. Because I do believe, as and when it comes to the buying cycle, through the network and leveraging the power of your team's network, it doesn't take much for a few people to see a LinkedIn post here or there and seeing more awards generated, and making sure winning agency awards, not just client awards. So being seen as a leader in the industry and getting shortlisted. And we've just got a silver in a big awards for us. We won a PR Moment Awards for Independent Agency of the Year, which was massive. We didn't think we were going to get anywhere near that. And those sorts of things, again, just put us on a pedestal a bit to shout about, right? Be proud about. So those 3 things, that the hard, cold outreach side, we haven't nailed. And that's never really been something we've done, mainly because, and other people might be listening to this with small agencies, it's often really tricky with a smaller agency, I think, to get the conversion rate over the line, i.e. they haven't worked with you, they don't know you, they haven't, yes, they'll see a cred, etc., or some background and go, oh, I've seen you've been going 10 years, you've got great brands. But there's still that human element of, oh, but if I know there's this other agency that I used to work with who are a bit bigger and more established, or my CMO or CEO might not know this name when I put it in front of them, so are they going to sign the PO off? So there's always a bit of that thing. So cold outreach, we're starting to invest in. We're going to start to do a bit more of it, but the first 3 is what I've really been doubling down on.
Definitely, and that's the way the 3 things that you've mentioned then link into the cold outreach, because then they see, oh, the first thing that somebody does when you receive an email or a message is look at your LinkedIn, look at your website. If there's big clients, big awards, big projects, they're more likely to respond to you. But again, there's no beating having that existing relationship. Not everybody's looking to buy it all the time, but when it is the time, as long as you're in their mind somewhere, then chances are you're going to be in with a shout.
I looked at your buying pyramid, mate. It's like 3% or something that are like ready to go right now, isn't it?
Yep.
So.
Yeah. And that's why we've gone away from the traditional, here's who we are, let me sell you something, because the most amount of people that are going to respond to you or who are ready to buy is 3%. So you've got to contact your entire target market just to get 3%. It just doesn't seem sensible. We'll move on to what's next then, and you can go wherever you want with this. We've touched on the industry a little bit, but what's next for the business, for you personally, maybe, and maybe take us through, I don't know, however far into the future you wanna look at.
Yeah, nice. I think being into, I know to say we'll start these with, I think, as an independent agency owner, Dave and I put 3 grand in each 11 years ago into this thing, right? So we've never had investment. It's 50-50 split. So Dave now still owns 3 grand of it, and so do I. Um, it's just interesting, right? As founders, you sit there and you talk about it and you chew the fat going, where's this headed? Like, what's the vision? Where do we want to go? At the moment, we're kind of enjoying the ride a bit. Doesn't mean it's not clunky and messy and a bit of a shit show every now and again, because that is agency life. I think at some point, you know, in 3-4 years down the line, if a big agency came sniffing that felt right culturally and knocked on the door and said, here's some nice money in your pocket, let's turbocharge the thing, great. I'm not going to turn that down if it felt right at the time. But also there's something really powerful, and Dave and I have only just turned 40, and being slightly in charge of your own destiny a bit, right? And making decisions and not having to report to anyone. And if we want to change strategy or direction or whatever, well, so be it. It's a quick conversation with each other and go, cool, let's write a slide, off we go. That's really empowering as a 40-year-old agency owner, right? We've still got quite a lot of time left, I hope, touch wood, to keep crunching it and learning as we go. So don't think too far ahead. I think we have a plan in terms of turnover and profitability and where we want to get to. Lots of agencies talk about trying to get to 5 million revenue, trying to get to the 20% profit margin and all that sort of stuff, which is a good benchmark to go with, which we heard a while ago. So that's always been slightly in the back of our minds as a goal to get to. And we're on track for that, and we might get there in a couple of years, which would be great. Other really important things for us, right, is ultimately I got a really good bit of advice. There's a podcaster called Jake Humphreys, who's the TV pundit. He's got a high performance podcast. He's a friend through the agency. And I spent a bit of time with him, and he's a brilliant guy to pick the brains of, right? He's met some most amazing people, and he's separately got a huge production company that's like 300 people. And I chatted with him and I was like, oh, how do we turbocharge this thing? And he said, Will, just think bigger. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And he was like, well, the two things that are going to change your business is, one, get people in your business working for you who you shouldn't really be able to get into your business, i.e. like hire the people that Dave and you look at each other and go, how the fuck have we got them? I'm swearing, by the way. I'm probably not allowed to swear.
That's fine.
So find the game changers, find the people that you both look at each other and go, oh my God, this is going to be beyond exciting. Like, how are we going to make this work? Can we cover their salary, etc.? Like, challenge yourself in that way. And then the other piece is the same with clients, right? Go out and be confident enough to target the brands and the clients that you shouldn't be able to win as the agency size you are. So it's the same when we won Pepsi and we started to put that on the website and the door when we were 5 people. They were like, sorry, you're the global agency and you're 5 people. We shouldn't have had that as a client. And I, rewind, and it's just the learning for us. I wish we'd shouted about that more and been louder and prouder about that. But you go through the classic founder imposter syndrome journey. So now it's about just being a bit more overt. We've been going a decade. Like, people know us in the industry now. We're building our profile. That sounds arrogant. I'm not meaning it that way, but we're getting a name now. So go out there, talk about it, shout about it, be proud about it, and go after those clients that you'd be like, if we got them, it'd be pretty terrifying. But go and do that. And the ones that align with the values, right? Like, if you want to do a certain type of work, go chase that. So that's another thing that we're thinking about, talent and client, and, thinking about what does that look like? What would you want that client page to look like on your website in 3 or 4 years' time? It's a good sort of vision board thing to have. And then just the other thing ultimately is just going to, goes back to what we were saying, right, is learn to adapt. The power of what anyone listening to this who runs a small agency has. If everyone's saying, oh, it's a bit unknown in the future, who knows where it's going to go? Awesome, right? You are 25, 30, 40 people. You can move way quicker than competition that are 200-300 people. Yep. Yes, they might have more resource. Yes, they might have bigger budgets to go and do it. But like, it's going to be a cruise ship that's turning versus you guys have got a speedboat and go, pull the anchor. Actually, let's pivot. Let's change our model slightly. So see that as an opportunity. And that's how Dave and I are thinking about this right now, right? No one knows really how fast it's going to move. We don't know what shape or form our agency is going to look like. We might look like a very different agency in 2 years, but we're going to run at it and see how that goes. So we might as well enjoy the fact we're independent and agile and nimble and roll with it.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it. You, as a founder, you probably always go through once we get here, then I can enjoy it and be and relax and be happy, but it's never the case.
Yeah.
So I think that's an overall a really good way of looking at it, of just enjoying the now, whatever comes, whether that's someone offering you some nice cash to go sit on a beach, or staying in it for longer. So it's good.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh, if people like the sound of you and want to check out the agency and see what you do, where can they find you?
You can find me at Will Cookson on LinkedIn. Is a good way. You can see what we've been up to and some more stuff that I've been thinking about, or just go straight to pangolinpr.com, get to the website, have a look at the epic work we do. If you're a client there that's thinking, I want to get some earned attention and work with lovely people, then give us a shout.
Very good. We'll leave links in the description for website and LinkedIn.
Love it.
But Will, it's been really good chatting. It's nice to have a look behind the curtain of an industry that I'm not too well versed on. So thank you for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me, Tom. Loved it.